be irulau. Watch your back, the trench is gonna get you. Watch your back, the trench is gonna get you. Watch your back,
Oh, there's a giant here. It's a coming from the agility. Gotta wash those red hands. It's the crimes of the Basque. It's the crimes of the Basque.
Hello there, Julie. How you doing?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Welcome to our podcast, Crimes
Thank you for welcoming
in
me.
the Basque Lands.
Yes, Crimes of the Basque Lands.
Of the Basque Lands. I mean, I was going to ask you just before we started. I'm like,
Is
you
this
may
right?
you may as well correct me on there.
Yeah, it's kind of our shtick now.
Of the Basque Lands.
Yeah. So our podcast
it is a podcast.
is about
It's about usually
crimes that take place either in the Basque Country and or anywhere in the world where any Basque person has been involved in a crime somehow.
Exactly.
Whether they're the victim, perpetrator, whatever.
Exactly. And we also have a drink with ourselves every week.
Yes, we do.
As we do this week. I have a beer, you have a wine. What are we going to start with?
You mean which one are we going to mention first?
Yes.
Let's talk about the wine.
Well,
It's cold outside. It's really cold right now. And so red wine always suits me in cold weather. I have to get off the white wine in the winter.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's warming. I'm just looking for the name. And
Alcorta.
Alcorta. Yes, it's quite a well-known wine.
Yeah, it's very common.
It is pretty common.
It's a Crianza Tempranillo
2013
from what is it called? Fuenmayor. Is the name of the town where it's from. And that's in the Rioja. So it's not really the Basque Country, but it's close enough.
Yeah. So Rioja,
Basque Country.
Yeah, I think we already talked about that, right? Like Rioja is a wine region that has both Basque and Spanish, like both sides.
Yeah.
And actually today we're going to talk about the Middle Ages, when this region was kind of going back and forth between Spain and the Basque Country. So it will be slightly relevant. I'm drinking a beer, which is from Gipuzkoa. And it's very nice. It's called Olañeta. Yes, Olañeta. And it's from Renteria, which is also kind of the region we're thinking about. It's closer to the region we're thinking about.
Okay.
Which is the last part of the Pyrenees as they come and go into the Atlantic Ocean. And this is where the story happened.
Yeah, and today's special because Douglas is going to give us a story today.
It is my.
I can't wait to be the bystander and just listen and comment.
Let's see how it goes. It's mostly around 1609 and 1610. And it's about witches.
Nice.
Witch trials and persecution.
Yes.
So the Basque Country has become associated with witchcraft as well as Galicia within the Spanish context. If we go back about 80, 90 years, that's when the Basque Country was incorporated into Spain. And so and plus during that first incorporation, we're talking 1520s.
Okay.
1520s to 30s. During that time was also when there was a lot of Protestantism and Catholics fighting in France to see who was going to win. So, and Navarre, which is the area we're going to talk about today, which used to be the old kingdom, the Basque kingdom, with capital in Pamplona. Religiously, we're looking at a place that had a lot of influence from the north, from Protestants, and there's a lot of suspicion, not only of Protestants, but also of just kind of folk religion, whatever they're doing, anything that the church doesn't recognize, it doesn't like.
Okay.
And so, there's a lot of suspicion. They don't necessarily speak Castilian. It's people that speak Basque. So there's all those kinds of tensions and things happening.
Okay.
So in this context, now, we're talking about, it's about 100 years after Navarre was incorporated into, well, the Spanish crown.
Uh-huh.
There's two main characters in the story,
Okay.
and let me just get their names here. So Maria de Chimildegui, and well, Maria de Chimildegui was born in 1588. So not a lot of stuff written about her.
Yeah.
But she was born in a very famous place for witchcraft in the Basque Country. It's kind of known as the capital of witchcraft, which is Zugarramurdi.
I've been there.
I haven't actually. I've heard
I've been to
much
the
about
caves and everything where supposedly
that's
they've
cool.
done the
deeds.
deed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Maria de Chimildegui, so she was, born in Zugarramurdi. She moved away at 16 and went to France. It doesn't specify here, but somewhere else I was reading suggested it would be in Bayonne. She went to work for a family for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And then she came back in 1609. During 1608, 1609, there was this guy in France who was also hunting witches.
A witch hunter.
He's a witch hunter, and he's killing people. It's
Yikes.
he's not just making them confess.
He's a real jerk.
He's a real jerk. So this guy was Pierre de Lancre. It's a name he chose.
Oh.
Although he is his surname is Arostegui.
Basque.
He is Basque. He's from Lower Navarre, which is actually a province in French Basque Country.
Oh, okay.
Because it's not as mountainous as Navarre, so it's lower, even though it's on the top.
Yeah, that's weird.
Indeed, and he's a bit of a bad boy. He had a lot of traumas, so he moved up to Bordeaux, chose a very French-sounding name.
Uh-huh.
He comes back and he thinks now that everything that's wrong with the world is anything Basque. So the Basques are the worst. It's a horrible language.
So he's rejecting all of his
Yeah. And so he
ancestry.
starts this hunt across the whole of the northern Basque Country. And of course, his problem isn't with women; it's with Basque women.
Yeah, of course. He's specific.
Yeah. And this is going on. He's killing people and hunting people, and it's horrible. And I guess it's you were asking if it's during the Inquisition, and yes, it is. It is during.
Yeah. I was wondering if it was something that coincided with the Inquisition.
So this Pierre guy, he's making a mess up north, and so
You mean like in France?
Yeah.
So he first started making a mess up in France.
Well, it's the French Basque Country.
Yeah. So
Northern
he was up
Basque
there
Country.
making waves.
He was.
Okay.
And so around about that time, Maria de Chimildegui moves back to Navarre. So she's bringing all those stories, that kind of the stress and, but also the stories, the confessions. So the idea was, if you confessed that you're a witch, I can absolve you and I don't need to kill you.
Okay.
But if you don't confess to being a witch, then I have no choice but kill you. It's kind of funny how all the cases that I read were either in Galicia
or the Basque
Catalan countries, or
the troublesome areas,
which are the areas
where they have their own language.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And weren't as incorporated into the states.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Perfect sense. Makes perfect sense.
These authorities get very nervous about the stories of witchcraft in their neighboring northern regions.
Mm-hmm.
And let's keep in mind, it's less than 100 years that they have taken over Navarre.
Okay.
And so actually the witch trials took place in Logroño, in La Rioja,
mm-hmm.
which is...
I did read about that, yeah.
It's part of Spain proper.
Mm-hmm.
And even there you can see that they're doing it outside of Navarre, because, why would we trust these people?
Right,
sort of thing.
Exactly. You can't hold a trial there. You can't trust anything they say.
Yeah.
Or their judicial system. Yeah.
Yeah. So they sent these two guys into the valley, into the mountains, and they start interviewing people and trying to collect stories. they get hundreds, 1,000, over 1,800 confessions they get. Over 1,000 of those are children.
Oh my God. Kids just saying shit.
That's for one.
That
It's
was Salem
children.
witch trials too. It was just kids talking about
sure.
people.
I'm sure. And then, so it was mostly kids. And but in another case where the authorities went into the Basque Mountains looking for people, they had a secret weapon that I have to mention because it's so ridiculous.
Should I hang on to my chapella?
Hold on to your chapella. They came in with twin little girls who could spot the witches.
Oh my God. No way.
Yeah, that was their technique to uncover the witches.
What?
They went around with these two little girls who could apparently sense.
These two little liars is what they were. They were just two little kids that were like pleasing adults.
Yeah.
They were just trying to please adults.
Yeah, totally.
And be like, oh, yeah, sure, we can do that.
Yeah, she's got a weird vibe.
We got this, yeah.
She must be a witch.
Oh my God.
You're also allowed to be tortured whilst you're being questioned.
Of course. That's how you get confessions, right? It's a really good way to get a confession.
Yeah. So you wonder why people confess. Because if you do confess, then I can finally absolve you. But if you don't confess, you're probably a witch. Really, who instigated the beginning of this witch trial was Maria Shimildegi.
She instigated the trial?
Well, because she came over and then she started saying that certain people were
so she's a bad
witches.
girl.
Yeah.
Here I was thinking all this time that she was some poor persecuted woman.
Exactly.
She ended up getting things started.
The story thickens.
Yikes. This is good.
Well, let's take a little mini break, and we'll be back.
Okay.
With the next.
All right, we'll be back.
And we're back.
Yes.
So I'm going to read a little bit from the Witch Trials in Navarre article in Wikipedia. And it gives us a little bit more context. So the investigation began when Maria de Shimildegi of Zugarramurdi claimed that she had attended a witch's Sabbath, which would be at nocturnal gatherings, and named other members of the village being present. Oof. She confronted one of the women. Well, I mean, she's clearly making it up, but she confronted one of the women she accused, Maria de Jaureteguía, in front of the woman's family, and recounted the details so vividly that the listeners became convinced and pressured the woman to confess. She admitted it was true and said she had been a witch since she was a small child. After her priest urged her to make a public confession during the next few days, various others who had been denounced came forward and made public confessions. Some of those under suspicion were dragged to the local priest by force and threatened with torture if they did not confess. I love how it's just the vividness that convinced them it must be true.
Yeah, they're like, wow, she had a really good story. It was very full of details.
It can't be not true.
Yeah.
It's terrible. So in January 1609, 4 self-denounced witches were taken to Logroño for initial hearing before the Inquisition. And in this case, it's not like it's the civil authorities, it's the government that is questioning them. It's not. Because later we discover...
Which was run by Catholics, right?
It was run by Catholics. Yeah, it's nobody's good here, but there's...
The government was Catholic.
It was, but it wasn't a church that was doing this. It was the government.
The state, yeah.
It was the state.
Yeah.
Although clearly,
which is run by
the priest
Catholics.
is involved and all of that.
Like, come on.
So not until the preliminary inquiries were completed did the inquirers inform the Inquisitor General of the Supreme Council in Madrid, which is that's what I was getting at. So they didn't, that now they told
they have
the
the preliminary hearing, and then they're like, we need to notify Madrid.
So these two inquisitors in Logroño assumed the existence of a witch sect was a fact. And largely because the witches' descriptions were in such close agreement.
Everybody agreed. They heard the same story.
Because their descriptions of the devil, nocturnal assemblies, and admission ceremonies tallied with very few discrepancies between the accounts, according to these two men who were leading the questioning.
Well, I mean, that's how like judicial systems work today too. Like if you have so many witnesses recounting the same thing, you tend to take it as truth, right?
It sounds good, but it's not. Because
right, of course. Like these are the flaws.
Because in March 1609, the Supreme Council of the Inquisition sent a questionnaire to Logroño to be administered to the imprisoned witches and witches still at liberty.
Okay.
And certain witnesses.
Okay.
However, these two beautiful men didn't do that. They just administered it to the 4 witches that were in prison.
Okay.
Well, the few witches.
So
I think
didn't
there were
question
10
the ones
witches.
that were still out of prison.
Because the questionnaire that the Madrid sent them actually was trying to catch people out with contradictions. Later on, this guy here, Alonso de Salazar Frias, comes into the story.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of steered the direction away from assuming first there were witches.
Okay.
Because that's what these two guys assumed. They just were like, okay, who are the witches? They didn't go, are witches a thing? Whereas Alonso de Salazar he was more like, I'm not sure about this witch thing.
Okay.
Let's try and, he was an actual investigator.
Okay.
And he, so through him, we see that actually that questionnaire wasn't administered to anybody else. The guys already assumed that witches were a thing.
Okay.
And the thing that Salazar brought to the table was that he was like, no, try to catch them out. What did Salazar have? He had Basque. He could talk to people.
Oh.
And he could actually converse. He was in a church.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent him out to the same valley to do lots of interviews.
Mm-hmm.
He took people to the caves,
mm-hmm.
and nobody could say where the devil was sitting, for example. They kept changing their minds. And then,
wait, maybe he was over there.
Yeah.
By that rock.
Yeah. Like the basis for him to find problem with the confessions is as hilarious as that. Like this woman said he was sitting on that stone. She said he was sitting
over there, and this girl said he was sitting over there.
But then later she said he was sitting over here.
And he looked like this or that. Yeah.
So actually he kind of brought, some sense
of justice.
Well, at least of logic. Not sure justice.
Well, I mean, justice is based on logic, right? You can reasonably believe something or not, right? That's the whole basis of it, right?
Yeah.
You can have to reasonably believe something happened or did not happen, right?
It's kind of the interesting thing. These two guys, the first two guys, they were making so many assumptions. Yes, they are witches, of course.
Naturally.
Let's just find who they are. And then there were these classic questions, which were like sometimes, hundreds of years old, that you were supposed to ask the witch. And then, there were these silly questions that were no way out,
Yeah.
So, of course, they would catch them. And they would feel very happy about themselves. So this guy, Salazar, is the first guy who's like, let's think about that. Okay. And people do say he managed to calm down witch trials
for the mob mentality,
even for the rest of Europe after he brought in these kinds of,
because he was just like an investigator.
It indeed. However, he was a bit late. He's not a good guy.
Too late to the show.
He's not a good guy because he is part of the 3 people who eventually decide to kill. These events occurred simultaneously with the witch hunt conducted by the French judge Pierre Lancre in the northern Basque country, north of the Pyrenees. His investigation led to mass burning of accused witches, numbered about over 80,
Wow.
people that he burns.
Wow.
There's little doubt that the news of Lancre's activities fueled the panic on the southern side of the border, and that's what led to this burning of these 6 people in 1610. It happened in Logroño, the capital of La Rioja. 30,000 people attended this burning on the stake.
Yeah.
The Bishop of Pamplona was actually not happy with this. He wrote to the Inquisition, because these guys, apparently didn't even know Basque. The first 2 guys that
came to interview people.
Yeah, who had all these people killed. And so in March 1611, the Inquisitor General instructed Salazar to make new visitations, this time alone, unaccompanied by the other inquisitors. He was not to use pressure or force confessions, nor to question witches about supposed accomplices, but he was to interrogate witches who allegedly attended the same gathering to see if their statements tallied. You see, this is very much what Salazar was always about. Well, I mean,
he was like a detective or something.
It comes out that although he was part of the 3 people who decided to kill these 6 people in the end, his doubts about the process, they weren't made public until many years later. So we know about it, but he kept quiet
at the time. Yeah.
And so that was when he went up and then interviewed everybody by him. And he's a Basque speaker, and there's a very moving part of the story when he calls this little boy like an angel, like a very pure soul. So somebody accused him,
This little boy,
I think he was 11. His little boys accused him of being a witch, and he denied. And his father didn't believe him. The
father thought he was a witch.
Yeah.
His own son.
Yeah. He said, you have to confess, because that's the only way to get out of it. And he didn't. He was lashed on a bed naked until he was unconscious. He was taken away, and then after this, he was interviewed by Salazar. Salazar decided to take him into a room by himself. No people pressuring him or looking. And he asked him to tell the story. He said, I'm not guilty. And he was like, do you know, you have to confess if it's true. And then eventually this little boy goes, yeah, but if I confess and it's not true, then that kind of, he doesn't say
That's
it with
wrong.
his words, but he's implying that defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
And that's when Salazar kind of really hits home to him. He realizes these are very poor villages. They're very, very basic. They get basically gruel to eat children. They don't get very nice food.
No.
And when you're coming to be interviewed by Mr. Priest, you get nice food, and it's a nice warm place.
Yeah.
So the longer your
you
stories,
tell them what you want to hear, they want to hear, and
Yeah.
you're going to get rewarded for that.
And that's the kind of 1+1 that Salazar put together, and was like, well, the whole system is broken because they're just confessing because. And later he talks to a woman, and we see that, I read this interview as well, and she's a grown woman, and he's like, so why did you lie to me, when he gets to the bottom of it? And she's like, you guys came for stories,
so I gave you a story.
I gave you a story. I mean, I went with it. That's what you wanted, right?
Yeah. Just pleasing people.
Yeah.
It's a people pleasing thing. Yeah.
It was a very hard story to go through. And I have a little last mention about Inessa Gachen, who is a poor woman living in France and accused by Lancre of being a witch.
Wait, who's Lancre?
Lancre is the guy in northern
France. The guy that was
in northern Basque country, and she was accused of being a witch. Out of the 80 people he killed, thankfully she escaped.
How?
well, she confessed and she wasn't killed.
Okay.
And then she came to the southern Basque country and was accused again, the poor woman.
Oh no, twice?
Yeah, thankfully she was not among the
What
people
was it about
killed.
her that people wanted to take her down?
One of the articles, but it wasn't confirmed by another one, but another one said she had some condition. Either her eye was not right or she was.
Oh
you
no.
know, yeah.
So some things you can't even help.
Yeah,
Oh my god.
So
That's
clearly
horrible.
everybody was just body shaming her for some
God.
issue she had. And I guess we should. At least I know 5 of the women's names that were burnt at the stake, and I think we should
Yeah.
at least read those.
For sure.
Maria de Simildeghi actually did.
She burned at the stake.
No,
The one that was like
no, 'cause she
snitching on
confessed.
everybody.
No, because she confessed. It's
But then
only
she
if you don't-
snitched on everybody too.
She created all the problems.
Yeah.
And she got
off.
She got off. So Maria de Simildeghi was not one of them, but Maria Bastan de Borda was one, and Maria de Sosaya, Graciana Shara, and Maria de Arburu. Yeah, this is Maria de Chachute. Yes, these are the 5 women that I
And the one
found
guy.
out, and that's the thing. I'm not sure if the last one was a guy.
Well, tell us about one of them if you have some information.
So Maria de Sasoya, for example, from Oyeregui. I can't tell you where that is, but I'm assuming around Navarre as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it says here in Navarre. She was resident in the town of Renteria in Gipuzkoa, and she was purportedly a witch of the same town's Aquelarre. Aquelarre is how they call the night Sabbath, which is how they call a witch meeting.
Oh, okay.
So here, an Aquelarre would be a witch meeting. So she was accused of being in
Part
the
of some
Renteria
meeting.
witch meeting. Mm-hmm. Witch meeting, yeah.
She was 79.
I know.
A 79-year-old.
Yeah.
Back in those days.
Yeah.
She lived to 79 and then
Yeah.
got killed as a witch.
She died in prison. But of course, since you had to burn the witches, her bones were burnt with the other 6 live people.
Oh, because she died in prison and then
Yeah.
they just burnt her bones.
Yeah, 5 people had died in prison during this whole palaver, and
So they didn't get burned at the stake.
5 women were burned alive. She had thankfully died.
She died before, but being held in prison
a 79
as a
year old,
condemned witch.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Little pause.
Take a break.
Pause.
So yeah, I can't believe that. Yeah,
it's really sad.
An almost 80-year-old woman.
She was 80 by the time she
Gets
turned 80 in prison.
79. She gets imprisoned, dies in prison.
Yeah,
and then they have to make like a spectacle of her by burning her bones.
The picture I saw of this very famous Zugarramurdi cave, I wouldn't have classified as a cave because it looks like just a big rock that was like a massive rock that was formed a hole with a river. Is this what you saw? Like a little river going through a tunnel sort of thing? Because it wasn't bigger than
you know what? It's
20
been
meters.
years, so I don't know exactly. I don't remember exactly that cave because I've been to a lot of places since then. And so I know we have a photo. Ramona and I have a photo of us at that cave. But we should all go. We have to go.
Sure. But was it more like a
well, it was a cave. There was definitely caves.
So like black insides.
Well, it was like a big opening in the rock, right? So you can imagine there was like seances happening there or something, whatever.
The one that
that's how they play it out when you do the tour or whatever.
And the reason why I say, which I love the idea, is because it's become part of Basque culture, being proud of our witches, of the Surguiñas, and you can find lots of little trinkets, as tourists, and you can take home little witch memorabilia. So now we actually have official commemorations every year, and they dance
to these witches.
No, it's. I
No,
think
it's not witches, but women.
Yeah,
were sacrificed for just being, I don't know, pagan.
I mean, now there's just pagan commemorations to kind of affirm,
or just being women, or just being different, or
but you're bringing things to the table. I'm just saying what happens in Zugarramurdi now is they have festivals.
yes,
They might probably they will be thinking about women. I mean, we know the Basque Country; they're always
pro women.
pro women, so I'm sure there's an element of remembering. Of course,
Yeah, because we
there's an
were
element of
saying
remembering the women.
that in the Basque Country, there was a lot of times when women were running the show
Yeah.
because men were away doing
Yeah.
other labor. You know, they were out
Mhm.
fishing or whaling or
Yeah.
coal mining, or
Mhm, mhm.
so women had to
Take care of
maintain
the house,
everything else,
yeah,
you know,
run
and the
everything.
finances, even, you know, like
Mhm.
doing everything.
Yeah.
So it's a very strong culture of that, and so that's a very strong matriarchal culture, as they like to say that it's matriarchal, but
They do. Yeah.
I contest that a lot of times because
It's a different. I consider it. It's true
I
that
believe
it
that
isn't.
that women have like a say,
Mhm,
and that it's respected,
mhm.
but it's still under a patriarchal. It's under like a Catholic church, or it's under a government that's not
That's
matriarchal. You know what I mean? Like
but
these are all functioning
Mhm.
within a structure or a system that's not matriarchal. You know what I mean?
yes and no, because you
But the
assume.
culture is
I think you assume that the church won, and that's the thing that my reading is different.
I'm not saying they win.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Because what I see in this story is the church and the state unsure of how much control they have over the Basque Country.
Mm-hmm.
And because they have
Scared
this
of.
certain amount of independence and separateness,
Yeah. It's
that's
frightening.
what, and that's why they have
need
these,
to have that control over them. Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like, whereas I think when we go to that village, the women are actually in control, and the church has a certain amount of control.
Or not even in control. They're just more participants
Mhm,
of
mhm,
the culture.
mhm, mhm.
Like they're taking part in the culture.
Yeah.
And then have real power within that culture. Like they're either like doing the family finances, or they're, their husband's out fishing, and they're the ones like selling the fish.
Yeah.
They're the ones making sure that everything gets sold, and how much money we're going to take in for the family and feed the family and everything. So it is threatening, it's threatening to other powers that be that want to control
but that's
certain groups.
That's
right?
the thing, like in more traditional Western European countries, you see women's rights aren't even allowed to have property, where I think here it's more generally there was more acceptance.
Under Franco.
Yeah, but what I was I just think women's position was more flexible in the Basque Country. I think there's more spaces for them to inhabit it over history, and I think that's definitely still something I feel. And
no, sure, for sure. And people say it.
Yeah, the word matriarch.
People that live here say it.
The word matriarchal implies a lot of legality, a lot of.
It implies
rights,
power.
Power, yeah.
It implies power that over everybody else, or like imposing some.
But implies recognized power, and I think that's where we depart in the Basque Country, where the power of the woman is here, but it's not legally recognized. It's just a fact in society.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't want to say.
It's very much a part of the culture and the society.
I don't want to say behind closed doors or at home, because that's kind of.
But it's not. It's recognized among everybody.
It is. But, in those moments like Franco, when in public you couldn't do anything at all.
No.
Then
couldn't have a bank account. You couldn't have a credit card. You couldn't have a mortgage or anything.
Well, I'm not sure, but I suppose.
No, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. You couldn't do anything without your husband's permission or your father's permission.
Exactly. Which is, I guess, I mean, it is a big reason why. Yeah, I mean, the language almost died, so it's a bit of a trauma for Basque society and an impetus towards wanting to be independent and trying to sort of run your own
Separate
laws.
yourself from
because
from this other culture. Yeah.
You know, if you look at the 1610 occurrence, that is a way of the Spanish state trying to impose its rules on the Basque country. You know,
everything is about opposing rule and power and.
I want to mention this. I think it's very appropriate here, although it's slightly changing the topic, because I was doing a course on Ukrainian statehood and the history of Ukrainian statehood, and one of the interesting points they made was Ukrainians were just being Ukrainians, but it was because of the countries around it that it had to become a country to protect itself against being eaten up by the empires around it. And that's very much, I think, how I see here the Basque country between France and Spain, you know, trying to survive and, you know, whether
having a say in their own
destiny and culture and everything. And so in a way, that nationalism, that identity comes out of other states being next to it, trying to impose their version of life. Because, you know,
for sure.
I mean, Basque people have been...
It makes perfect sense.
They've been happy in the French state and in the Spanish state for many centuries, and then not happy for many other centuries. Yeah. So, but in a way...
When somebody tries to tell you what to do, it's like, wait a minute.
I just love that attrition of the idea of the fact that it's the attrition between two states that creates another state. You know, where people don't... You know, there's always this idea that we are one thing, and then everybody else that doesn't fit in suddenly
becomes another,
has to decide what to do. What do I do? Do I change myself a little bit and right? Or do I go, well, actually, no, that's too much. I'm really not that. And then you have to, you find yourself that
kind
you have
of forced to
form another something, state identity or whoever you are. No, but anyway, see you guys next time. Do we say?
So, yes, if you want to send us any stories, because we're always looking for anything in the Basque. Wait, you told me how to pronounce this word.
Diaspora.
See, I've only ever read it, so I never heard it pronounced. Diaspora. So anything in the Basque diaspora. So write to us at crimesofthebasquelands@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Or on Instagram, you can follow us on Crimes of the Basque Lands.
Yeah.
We bid you
agur.
Crimes of the Basque Lands is written and produced by
Douglas D. Carvalho,
Julie Garcia,
I'm Megan Dooley.
The sound and editing for each episode by
Douglas D. Carvalho.
I'm Megan Dooley.
Theme song written by
Douglas D. Carvalho,
Julie Garcia.
I'm Megan Dooley.
Sung by the choir with no name and produced by Tom Squires. Podcast art by Distinct Signal. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Crimes of the Basque Lands, and contact us at crimesofthebasquelands@gmail.com with story ideas worldwide which have a connection to the Basque Country, or any rave reviews. If you like our podcast, please subscribe, like, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, agur!